Okay, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you may be. Uh, New feature Friday. We're going to talk a little bit about a new feature that is out that we just released for Barpath. And this is going to be specifically around federations. I think a big, massive question that I think a lot of people have are what are the prominent federations? You get a lot of people who think that the IPF is the end all be all, but really don't have any way of substantiating that. And then you look at other federations saying that they're the most competitive, or that there's options, or does the IPF and affiliates have a monopoly on the market or something to that effect? And who are the strongest people and what is the strongest federation? All the questions and rhetoric that you would think, who's growing the most, etc. So I felt within myself and the data that we have in Barpath's platform, and this was suited well. So we have a federations tab now, and we have five distinct categories. The strongest, and this isn't the meant to be the who's the best federation. This is meant to be who is the what are some key metrics for each federation, but at the same time a little bit of detailed information about them. So who the strongest federation in terms of the 90th percentile in dots, for raw or raw wrap single ply, etc. USAPL is the biggest. Who's the biggest federation, who's the fastest growing, who has the most meets historically, widest reach, right? So when you look at that, you scroll down, it's like we about 35 of the top. We don't want to just rank every single one of them because some of them are just dead federations that don't exist anymore. So, looking through each one of these, you can see the numbers will change, significantly, right? But looking and staying in the raw space, you can kind of look and see the information in the data, and then you scroll over to biggest, and you start seeing more and more like who has like the the entries, all time number of unique people lifters over the last 3 years, etc. Fastest growing, who really is growing over the last 3 years, and where things kind of set today. Most number of meets, widest reach. So who has the most sprawling arms between affiliates or states or competitors, etc., across different metrics. So when we look at that, it's like, okay, that's great. These five categories are awesome. But what if I want to drill down to specific, federations? And that's where we dive into these specific metrics: the number of lifters, their aggregate P90 dots across everything. They're the number one biggest, third most meets, 10 widest reach. Their growth since 2024, the number of countries they represent, etc. People have come from different areas, etc. The top lifters, before they left or whatever. Uh, Looking at strongest. This does include IPF affiliate feds that are funnel into the IPF. So whether it be the EPF or NAPF, and different things like that. But then you look at different other federations. There is a criteria of at least 500 distinct lifters over the last 3 years. So when you look at you know Powerlifting America over the last years, you know, what have they done? Their growth, their average dots, as they get more members, as they give like that, these numbers start to kind of fall off a little bit. Um, and you kind of go from there. The data and how it's classified, et cetera. Their eighth strongest raw. Um, Things classify as single ply. Multiply is kind of weird because a lot of times is this isn't multiply, this is single ply, but it's classified as equipment. This is an open powerlifting error. that has to be fixed. But when we looked at, different federations, ones with a longer history, in years, like the EPF, for instance, over time, their growth, they've been around for a very long time, but they continue to grow. So the top countries that represent them, Singapore, Raw, etc. But yeah, so as you continue, this is just the initial push of these particular things, but you can see as a whole, some demographics about each federation. In coming features, we are going to be tying this back to the lifter and tying them back to specific other key metrics, but this is the initial release of this. Pro and pro users, subscribers, coaches, gyms, basically anyone with a pro or above will get early access to this. Eventually, it will go to public viewing, so GA. So you won't have to pay anything to see this data, but as promised to my subscribers, they get early access to this, to get to use it, get to play with it, get to look at all the cool data about each one of their feds, and can kind of go from there. So Barpath Federations is live, and if you guys have questions, let us know. But hopefully you find this useful.